Welcome, welcome, welcome. Everyone, welcome back to another exciting episode of SOS, Soul Filling Our Sisters, brought to you by Black Genes Matters by Touch for Life on the one and only blackdoctor.org network. We are so excited to see you today. We hope that you are here to fill your cups and get some information on your health and what's impacting the Black community. And that's what we do every fourth Saturday here on blackdoctor.org. So today, our topic is blood cancer. Did you know that multiple myeloma is the most commonly diagnosed blood cancer in Black individuals? And even though it only accounts for maybe 2% of all of those cancers, it is one of the leading causes of cancer-related death. So we have to talk about it today because, breast cancer gets a lot of news and a lot of press, and rightfully so, because our sisters are impacted by breast cancer, right? But we need to know what the issues are, what the questions are, what is the research and the innovation that's happening in every space across the continuum, because we want to see our people live and thrive and have a healthy, beautiful, happy life. So we're going to talk about it today. I'm very excited to welcome some amazing guests. We have Dr. Ann Catherine Eisfeld. She's a professor in the Department of Hematology at The Ohio State University. We want to remind you to share this on blackdoctor.org. We want you to share it with your network. So all you do is click the little share button right at the bottom and you can share it to your entire network. We are also on YouTube. Put your questions in the chat. And of course, we want to thank our sponsors, Hologic and High Impact Partners. So here we are. We're getting ready to get started. I want you to put where in the chat you're from and what are your questions on blood cancer. We'll be right back with our very first guest. Stay tuned. To inspire, equip, and rejuvenate you. It is SOS every fourth Saturday here on blackdoctor.org. And we're so grateful to have Dr. Eisfeld joining us from The Ohio State University. Doc, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm like moving here. The music is so relaxing. I'm getting in the mood.
Absolutely. This is a table talk. This is like a kitchen table conversation among sisters and friends. So we're here. We want to welcome you. We want you to introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about you and more importantly, tell us your why. Why do you do what you do?
It's a great question. So my name is Ann Catherine Eisfeld. They made it short for AK. I came here to the United States in 2010. I had amazing mentors who brought me here from Germany. That's why I was born and where I used to be a hematologist. I thought I'd just come here for a year or two. I loved it. The Ohio State University is a great place to do research. It's a great place to live, and finding friends that came all in there. And just from the shortening of my name, that was what my mentor said. He said, Ann Catherine is way too long. Nobody can remember that. And so all my patients call me just AK. It's way easier than remembering anything else. It's also like a nice way to get along, in here. I always wanted to take care of blood cancer patients. We have it's like one of the most exciting areas. It's when I started taking care of blood cancer patients 20 years ago, there was not much. There were no more treatments and perhaps a really intensive chemotherapy out there. And it just is like in many of the cancer fields, just, exploding is a negative word. I would say branching like a tree, like all the options in here. And back then it was just that we started to do bone marrow transplants in our patients. And for me, that was so inspiring to see like how out of the sudden patients would live. And for some of them, we can just give them a pill and they'll do fine. For many, not, but that's an exciting area to be in.
And it is exciting to hear that, there's so much hope in this space and research in this space because, people hear blood cancer and they think, okay, it's everywhere and that my chances might not be great and there's not great therapies. But we're here to tell you today, that there really are. And so I wonder if you could start off by telling us a little bit about some of your research at the Clara Bloomfield Center for Leukemia Outcomes Research. And even before that, if you had to answer the question in the chat, what is leukemia? How would you explain it?
Yeah, let's start with that question of leukemia, and then I'll answer about the Bloomfield Center that I'm leading in here. So leukemia is probably the most aggressive form of blood cancer. So in our bone marrow, which is responsible to produce our red cells, the platelets, all the immune cells in the body, basically what happens is that out of the sudden, one of our stem cells gets out of control and then produces a lot of useless immature cells that clog up our vessels. And we don't build normal blood, normal immune cells anymore. And this happens from like this one day to the other. If people are healthy one day, the next day, it's not that they did anything wrong. There's nothing that comes with that. It really just comes like this. And we know now that it happens because some of the genes within the cancer cell, they're like changes that happen from one moment to the other within the DNA. That's what defines how the leukemia is, and that's what we're going to talk about. Because what the Bloomfield Center does is that we try to find out which patients do better, which patients do worse. And when I started the center in 2020, we really have been thinking, and I'm very, our kitchen talk, very honest, more thinking about which treatment, the broader community, what we are seeing. But then just a year or two in, when I saw my patients, and I would have not noticed that in Germany, I noticed that genes matter. And that's the most, of course, the most important part. But there were part of my patients who did especially worse, even though I knew the genes and I thought I knew what was happening. And these were my Black patients who just never responded the way how I thought they should respond. I find a gene, and many of them, I couldn't find any of the genes when we do our regular genetic testing panels. And that's what we decided then to focus on. And by now, we are big, we have multiple people, like number of people, statisticians, bioinformaticians, geneticists, cytogeneticists, all working on understanding better, all the things we don't know.
Wow. So that's so interesting. You said when you treated your Black patients, they just weren't doing as well. Their outcomes weren't the same. And I know you get asked this question, and it probably has either a long answer or an answer we don't know. But what are some of the reasons why?
So there are multiple reasons, and they're all interconnected. I think the elephant in the room, and then I end with the genes, which is what I study, is structural racism, right? My Black patients don't make it to the cancer centers. They might not have the support, and then they might not get treated with the best and newest options. And they might not be even offered the testing that is responsible for them. So that is, I think, the most important part. If they have blood cancer, one of the cures is a bone marrow transplant. Many of my patients just don't have donors. But another part is, and that's what my own focus is, I think we all have to work to overcome all racism, all these structural things that are just in the society, in here. But the one step that I felt I could do is try to understand the genes better. And like to take a step back, what I said, we understand why leukemia or blood cancers are happening. And that's regardless if it's leukemia or multiple myeloma or any other blood cancer. And it's because millions of dollars were invested by large cancer centers to look at all the cancer genes. And for leukemia, that's a good example. This disease I studied, we looked people looked at almost 5,000 patients. And that kind of gave us like a map. If you would think of you want to depict the world map and know these are all the countries that are in, that's what we did for leukemia to understand what the genes are. And that's how we treat patients. We say, if you have gene A, you'll do great. If you have gene B, you might not be doing well. But when we took a step back with my team, turns out of these almost 5,000 patients, less than 2% were Black. Less than 2%. This means we know very well how European leukemia patients do. But we have honestly, and we just have to be fair to say that, no clue about anybody else. And so this now, if you put this into perspective, it makes sense that everybody is different. Everybody needs the same attention. Every person is different. And so there has been a huge, huge bias. And that just goes along with everything else. If you don't go to the major cancer centers, you will not get your blood drawn, and it will not get tested, and you will not be then the sample that goes to inform what we know about blood cancers. And my goal in life is to change that.
Wow. And you bring up such an important point, and it is parallel in the breast cancer world. I'm a surgical oncologist in breast cancer, and I conduct research, but less than 3% of breast cancer clinical trials have people of color, right? Black people in particular. And there's such a disparity. So, when you highlight these disparities, outside of participation alone, are there other disparities that you have observed that you're working to combat with your research?
There numerous, besides I think that's why all my research starts in one thing and then it again branches out, and it's a good thing, right? Because as you said, it's between trial enrollment, then not only clinical trials but also biobanking, right? Do people consent to give their samples, right? And there are many reasons people don't want to do it. So what we do is that most of my I call them kids, they're my students who live in the labs. They actually do by now. So they're the undergrad student, high school students who volunteer to work with me. Most of them are also from underrepresented communities. And what we learned is if they go and talk to patients, they actually make them understand and talk in a different language, and I try to get better, but they're just natural. They can go there, they can tell in a different way. And that's I know it's not really research, but it goes in parallel, right? And then we really try to understand what other barriers there are and what that hinders participation. And the main thing is to look at drug responses. So we have a network now and collaborate with almost 30 different physicians and scientists across the globe. And everybody has a best specialty. So what I did is just reach out to the best person I know in a specific area and say, hey, how about you give us your expertise and you try to find out what all is not known in non-European people. And I'm really gonna be broad because, as you said, it's, Black people are over proportionally affected, but it goes across. Hispanic people who self-identify, anybody who is not this very narrow, and that's I'm in the middle of it in here, but saying not that very narrow German, because most actually of the people who have been tested and who inform our knowledge come from Germany or the Netherlands.
It's very true and very interesting. And you're right. We bear the disproportionate burden of disease. But one thing that I heard you say, and I don't know if people picked up on this, is the mentoring and the sponsorship. You said the folks who work in your lab represent the communities that they are serving and that they are interested in solving the challenges for. And I recall being a graduate student working in a chemo prevention lab at Fox Chase Cancer Center. And I used to go out to the community with the mobile mammogram van. And he said, I want you to come because you can talk to these women and you can speak in a language they understand and get them to get their mammograms. And so I love that. And I wanted to point that out, even though it's aside from your research and it's above and beyond, but it is really fueling the pipeline. We're going to go to the next segment, but when we come back, I really want you to tell us a little bit more about a manuscript that you have that is about to be published. So we want to hear about this research that you're doing. And when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more with Dr. A.K. Eisfeld from The Ohio State University. Stay right with us. Hey, Laura.
Hi there.
So great to see you. I heard you got some news to tell us about Feed the Fight.
Yes, Feed Your Fight. Thank you so much. We Touch for Life just launched a book. Yes, that's the author, Sharon Hawks. It's called Feed Your Fight. It's full of information, but most importantly, one of my friends in this work says that when you don't have what you want, you create it. And that's what we did. So when going through the journey, it was difficult to find culturally appropriate nutrition information and food that we would eat in the Black community. And so we created Feed Your Fight. It's full of recipes from survivors and thrivers. In fact, when you get the book, there's QR codes with videos of them telling about their recipes and the food. And so it's really meant to be a fun nutrition guide. It's sort of basically like the Mediterranean diet, but with soul. And but these recipes really come from women who have been through breast cancer in particular, and their families, and they share what works for them. And so we're super excited to have it launch. It's available on Amazon.
Wonderful. I was just going to ask you, how can people access this? Can we put the link into the chat? Because, we want to teach our community not only to live to eat, but eat to live. And eating to live means eating well and incorporating food as medicine. So put the link in the chat. We're going to talk more about it. We're going to make sure that everybody goes to Amazon and gets the book, Feed Your Fight, for breast cancer survivors and thrivers, by breast cancer survivors and thrivers. And while we're talking about surviving and talking about thriving, we got to talk about AML, acute myeloid leukemia, and some of the genetic underpinnings and the research that Dr. AK has been involved in. Doc, tell us more about this publication.
Yeah, it's the first time I get to really talk about it in here. It's not, as we said, published yet, but I think it's a perfect way to put it out. So taking a step back, what we showed before is both in the community, like in the community setting and in clinical trials, that Black patients do worse, and even if they have the same genetic underpinning. So we wanted to know why, and did what hadn't been done before, and we didn't test the known cancer genes, but we did what we call whole exome sequencing, test every gene and whole total transcriptome sequencing. On 100, this is the start, but we are actually now up to almost 300 Black patients from the United States treated at the cancer centers here, and we are expanding to go, and I'll tell you about the most exciting parts in here to go even outside of that. And when we were sequencing the cancer genomes, what we noticed was that not only are the frequencies of the known genes different, but there are genes that nobody has seen before. And they are in up to 7% or 8% of the Black community, of the patients. And this is not, it's really specific to the leukemia. And we believe that these genes are the reason that leukemia is behaving the way it is, that it's really influencing it. The second most, and probably another incredibly important finding, was that we have one gene, like a gene mutation, that's in every, and if you go to guidelines and NCCN of we have the European Leukemia Net, you see the name is in there, again, European Leukemia Net. There is one gene change, it's called NPM1. If you have it, you usually go to your patients and say, good news, your leukemia shouldn't be too bad. I don't think you need a bone marrow transplant. You have a high chance to be cured just with a regular, boring chemotherapy alone. We found out that this gene also matters in Black patients. However, it's the opposite. If you have it, it's the most adverse genetic feature. So you have the opposite response. And we did sequencing not only of the bulk of cancer cells, but single cells. We found the reason why, and it's just an enrichment. And it's really, it's biology. What you see is that there is a change in the gene programs that's incredibly common in Black patients. It's also present in very few white patients. But the white patients, the European patients who have the same program, also don't respond. So we would have never found out about it. So what it just says, we learn about our entire community only if we include the entire community. Wow. Right? We only and the more we can do this, that's why we can't have to stop. How would we, and that's still benefit everybody at the end. And I think these were incredibly exciting findings that we have and that we hope change practice, because we have to be honest. So when I see my patients, I go and I say, I'm very sorry, I wish I could tell you yet what it means. But, because there are not enough patients per study, but we can't, just, pretend that we know all these parts. And I think that's a great opportunity to let patients know, hey, with your help, we might be able to change it. What you said, and that's what my students do. And I think all of them, they are thriving, they stay in some research. I think they will be the ones who hopefully change the world and who change our knowledge around.
Oh my gosh, this is so impactful, because what I hear you saying is, the rising tide truly floats all boats, and that there is a benefit to focusing on equity and inclusion in cancer research, and that benefit includes and extends to those who are not from the same ethnic or ancestral or even socioeconomic, regional, is that when we learn about different communities and how they respond, it can impact everyone.
It will. And that is really what people have to understand and learn, right? It's like, if we are exclusive, it hurts everybody. And that's the reason when you like, when one looks at survival associations, as you do, like, they're never perfect. And in my mind, the reason is that we are restricting ourselves to just a few. So going out, being honest, and encouraging everybody to be a part of it. And what we did, and now I'm like coming, I'm sorry I talk so much because I'm so excited about it. The main thing is that we can't stop here, right? So what we did is, and we're still in the works, I collaborate with centers in Africa. And the first ones I collaborated with were 2 centers in Nigeria. And they're amazing colleagues of mine, Faluku Fasola. They are so driven, and they helped us. And so one of our fellows, Omolego Momo from New York, she is like a resident, was at that time a resident, now a hematology fellow. Awesome. Flew to her hometown, like, get the slides. It took a long time to get the paperwork in place, and we as collaborators like did the analysis together. They are part of the paper, and they confirmed, yes, we see these genes that we found here in the United States in the patients in Africa. But interestingly, not in every country. We found it in Nigeria, but not in Lesotho. And, and I think this is just showing, again, tip of the iceberg. That's where we have to go. And then opening it up and say, hey, but we should do everything together. We should do the grants together. That's what we do, and we have to try to enable you to do the testing as well. And this is going to be, if I want to, like, people say, what's your work in a few years? This is just such a, there's so much work to do and so much fun work to do. And it's just
so what I hear you saying also is, not only the research from your lab, but going across the diaspora, applying for and sharing the funding, sharing the knowledge, right, and extending it and empowering communities to be able to conduct this research themselves. So I mean, you are just, when I think of the epitome of inclusive excellence, it is the work that you're doing. I have to tell you this: if no one has told you that, this is a model for how we should be performing research, especially in cancer care, but really across all of our spheres, Laura. Don't you think?
Thank you for saying. My hope is to do a little part, in here. But the main thing, as you said, I think my dream is to see my kids thrive, right? And like go across the world, go to their home countries, be proud of what they do. And them coming back, and we applied for a couple of grants with some of junior Nigerian investigators, one Kenyan investigator, to hopefully come. But again, as you said, the main thing is to bring the knowledge back, to not do colonialization. It's a very terrible word in here, but I think we have to keep this in mind, because it doesn't help, if this is not benefiting everybody. And the one thing they're working with the communities in Africa is, yes, we want to include knowledge and they want to do it, but we also have to help them to even get a blood transfusion, right? Yeah. What can we do to do that? And that's very humbling, and like, it's great. So I think it's just so many, so many different efforts and so many different layers in here. And I'm so grateful for my patients too, who are able, I wish I had planned for one of my patients to come, but she became acutely sick in here and wasn't able to join today, but they are such spokes people. Like, they go out and they try to encourage, and they go to their communities, and without them, we would be much worse off too. So everybody here, thank you all for joining and listening in, and spread the word, and please ask any questions at any time.
This is incredible. Mm-hmm. So what is your research, you think, practice changing at this point? Is it changing some of the ways in which we actually care for patients? Because one of the arguments about research that we hear, especially from folks in the community, that, it's going to benefit somebody else, but it won't directly benefit me. What do you think?
Actually it will, Monique. But they're the things, right? So what took a while to get the manuscript published, it's accepted in Nature Genetics in here, was that they said, well, please give us a validation cohort. And I said, I'd love to do that. Give me one. Find another one, because there's a reason they are only from all the 5,000 patients that were sequenced, and they said, oh, why don't you collaborate? You're from Germany. I said, great question, but that's not where you find it, right? Like in here. So we actually, this last week, we're in communication with the FDA and are trying to see if there is a way to do a trial with a specific background, it would not be, and we are really like, this is something I like will talk Laura more about as well. And the idea is to get input from patient advocates, how we can design it best. We want to try to do a different frontline treatment, probably not explicitly, but enrich, where we make sure that this is a trial where Black patients are not the minority, but the majority, so that we have the numbers to afterwards see what they do. And we, I'd be very excited because I think it's like switching around and say, "Done. This is the best treatment we have at the moment," and that's what we want to enroll people for. And then we finally have an answer, not from the background, but from the front row. And the FDA seems supportive, so I am excited about that.
Yes, we put in the comments, patient advocates enrich research, and I think there's a huge opportunity for those of you who are watching from your advocacy organizations to get in touch. We'll make sure that we put the contact information. Yes, because we want to be included not as a trial progresses, but on the front end in trial design and recruitment and reviewing the outcomes and publishing the papers. Inclusiveness benefits everybody. Well, Dr.
Learning for somebody like me, right? When I came into this area, what I learned most from patient advocates, because I think people in the very professional community often too polite. They don't tell me if I'm saying something wrong. I learned most from my patient advocates and from my patients who say, AK, I think you shouldn't put it this way. English is my second language. And, like in here, so going out there and saying, hey, this is the way how I would put it. That's so important. And it's enhancing everybody's knowledge right in here, and it's not critique. It's just making things better, and how otherwise, right? Like if you do it, and that's
absolutely
the more of these good critiques and feedback stuff, the better.
We love it. Well, Dr. AK, I know that you have to travel, and I wanted to get your closing thoughts on this. Are there any final things that you want people watching to take away from this? Anything else that we can say that really sums up the work that you're doing and the work that you hope to do?
Yes, I think the best thing I would say, go to major centers, ask about research, if possible. Think about if you would be agreeable to donate some leftover tissue. But most importantly, ask your doctor if what he's telling you about your disease, if we know if this is the same true for everybody, and if it's the same true for you. And you'll be surprised about the answers. It's not bad to make people uncomfortable sometimes. If they have to acknowledge that's not the case, but then or it is the case. Like you said in your opening statement, multiple myeloma, much strides were made, much research has been done. We just have to be the same in here. So challenge your doctors, and and get in contact with me, with any other person. We're all so grateful for you, and really fuel yourselves through this, and we are getting fueled by you on a daily basis. Thank you for everything that you do.
Oh, this is incredible. You heard it here. Dr. AK said she wants you to ask about that research. Donate tissue. Biobanking is a thing and an important component of research now and in the future. And ask how relevant that data is to you. Dr. AK Eisfeld, thank you so much for the work you're doing, for coming and sharing it with this community in ways that we can understand, and for doing the work that you are doing, the legacy building work in research acute myeloid leukemia, particularly for the Black and Brown community. I applaud you, and I just love you, sister. So I appreciate you.
Thank you. Like I love what you're doing here. Happy to come back anytime. Sorry that today I had to fly out a day earlier than I thought so. But again, excited to do this, and this is a journey, a marathon, and you get the endorphins while you run. So that's what we do. So the longer the run, the happier you get, and the more we can all achieve. So, and we're just at mile like 5 or so.
Love it.
We have a bit to go.
That's right. We'll see you at the next mile marker. We will definitely have you back on the show and talk about some collaborative research.
Thank you.
Safe travel.
You have a wonderful blessed weekend.
You also.
Bless you.
Wow. This is SOS, Soul Filling Our Sisters on blackdoctor.org. We are going to be right back. We want to remind you at this time that there is a giveaway. If anybody knows Laura Crandon, she gives from the heart, and she loves to give stuff away. So if you want to find out what the prize is, what the giveaway is, you have got to pull out your cell phone, pull out your smartphone, open up the camera, click the QR code, and enter the giveaway with Touch for Life. We want you to join our SOS community, join the Touch for Life community, join the Black Jeans Matters movement, and it all starts by clicking the QR code. So if you want to know what the prize is, you got to enter to win. We hope to see you, and we hope to hear the prize that you have won, and we want you to come back every fourth Saturday here on blackdoctor.org as part of the SOS community. Now, I have the opportunity to introduce our next guest, Ms. Jennifer Dean.
Good afternoon.
Hello. How are you today?
I am feeling great today. Thank you for asking. How are you feeling?
Oh, just magical. This is a favorite part of the show for me because we get to talk to some advocates, and I'm going to let you introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about your story. Tell us your why and what brings you to SOS today.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm really enjoying this energy. Dr. AK was awesome. And the DJ, this music that plays is awesome. It's energizing. Let's see. So my name is Jennifer Dean. I am an advocate on the daily. Just like some of you and someone you may know, I wear multiple hats. For me, these hats look like a Superboy mom of two, fiance, daughter, sister, friend, servant, natural advocate. Couldn't get away from it if I tried. This year, I actually added a new hat to my collection, and that is of a thriver. At 37, life threw a curveball my way with the diagnosis of invasive ductal carcinoma stage 3C. It was HER2 positive and ER positive, so pretty aggressive. Despite the challenges of everything, so chemo, radiation, surgeries, ongoing therapies, anything you could think of, I've been attempting to turn my struggles into strengths for myself and other people. So this journey, and that's a glimpse of my past year, but this journey, particularly this specific journey, it really began and is continuing with self-advocacy.
Mm-hmm. It's so important because we just finished our last segment talking about the power of advocates. Did you know, and were you an advocate before breast cancer? And if so, what makes somebody a great advocate? Can you tell us more?
Sure. So again, a self-proclaimed natural advocate. I also work for Department of Human Services. So on a daily basis, for over 20 years, I've been an advocate for the families in Washington, D.C., removing barriers they may impact their journey to self-sufficiency. And as well as friends, family, I'm the one that's going to speak up regardless, even if it has nothing to do with me. I think part of what makes someone a great advocate is just having that courage to stick up. And again, not just for themselves, but for other people, even if they feel like it doesn't have anything to do with them, being able to see an injustice, being able to see that someone may be a little uncomfortable. I really liked what Dr. AK said. Don't be scared to make someone uncomfortable. Like there's more important things in the world than someone being uncomfortable. Ask the questions, do the research, be there for others.
Have you faced some challenges where you had to advocate for yourself? Can you give us any examples maybe of a time when you needed to step up and ask those questions for yourself or your loved ones?
Sure. I mean, recently, again, I said this process for me started with self-advocacy. I was brushed off after a misdiagnosis. So at 37, I went in. I was actually breastfeeding my then 9-month-old, and I thought I had clogged milk ducts. Leave it to me. I'll tell you, I had perfect breast. Everything, everything was fine. But I'm exaggerating, but the right side in about a 2-week period became completely disformed. So large lumps, nodules, you could see it, you could feel it, lumps under my armpit. And I thought again that they were clogged milk ducts. So I went to my doctor, just really, I mean, advocating for my child, seeing if I could still feed him. He hadn't started baby food or anything. It was strictly breast milk. And so when I went in, it was initially in about a 13-minute appointment. It was diagnosed as an infection, and I was prescribed a prescription. As she walked out the room and I started getting dressed, I felt so uncomfortable. And so, you know what? Can I at least have an order for an X-ray? I didn't even know what to ask. I just wanted to know someone was putting their eye on me and documenting it.
That's
So,
right.
and then I
No,
had no plans on taking the antibiotics anyway. And so, so, um, and so
mm-hmm.
I went to my car and I noticed that the order was for a doctor's office that was about 2 blocks away. So I sat in the car, I called, and I made an appointment for a mammogram. At the time, I had no idea that an x-ray wasn't the same thing as a mammogram. In my head, a breast x-ray is a mammogram. So that's what I made the appointment for. They said if I could wait 2 hours, I could come in. I waited 2 hours in my car, in my hot car. I went in and immediately she told me that I had the wrong order, that I did need an order for a mammogram. She called over to the doctor's office after I had an unsuccessful call with them where I was told no for several different reasons. One, because I was under 40. Two,
Yes.
because I was still breastfeeding and you need to be a year and a half out. Three, because my doctor was with another patient at this point. Several reasons. I don't like the word no. I think that also helps with great advocacy.
Yep. 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 Talk about it.
So the lady, I think, in front of me saw my facial expressions, and she actually walked over to my doctor's office 2 blocks away, same parking lot, but a little walk. And she came back with the order for me, a comprehensive order too, a mammogram, a ultrasound, everything. And in that one day, I found out I was diagnosed. I had several tumors, one being 5 centimeters that they actually did the biopsy on, 2 different sections, thinking it was 2 different ones. It was one large one, several nodules. And because it's HER2 positive and estrogen positive, it was pretty aggressive.
Mhm.
And so that is probably one of my biggest moments of advocacy, self advocacy at that. Yeah.
And it's sad because you know your story parallels so many other young women who were diagnosed before their first mammogram, told that they
Mhm.
had nothing or that it was something else, dismissed. And then, when you try to advocate and get that mammogram, told you're too young or you don't meet the criteria for it. And I think that, we just we need to do a better job as a medical community of learning to listen to and believe our patients. So, I guess my questions for you, we got a lot of folks watching who, have loved ones and they too have maybe either been dismissed by their doctors or not really paying attention to the changes in their breast. What would you say? What advice would you give to others who are, facing similar battles? What advice do you have?
One, of course, advocacy. Two, the research. I think that for me, again, I have children, family. I actually have a family history of cancer. I pushed for genetic testing, which was huge, that I should have been able to get during my pregnancies. I had 2 high-risk pregnancies as well. So I pushed for that. So push for genetic testing. I actually found out that I do have the ATM gene. And so, though the challenges of like chemo and radiation and surgeries, they've all been super tough. But I think I found strength in like personal resilience, and just again trying to turn those struggles into strengths and trying to find some humor in some of these tough situations, that has really been helping with my coping mechanisms. For instance, adding pink to my wardrobe. I don't like pink, but it's like a little ongoing and personal joke for me.
I can.
But my advice is just to kind of I mean, for others, is to find out what keeps you grounded and what brings you joy.
Mm,
Surround yourself with supportive people. I have an amazing support team. Even those that are new to my team, they always say no new friends. Yes, new friends. Be a new friend, accept new friendships. And don't be afraid to lean on them. I think that's one of the hard things for me. I've always been Miss Independent. So not being afraid to lean on your team, your support system, and remember, it's okay to have bad days, but just don't let them define you. Keep
mhm,
pushing through. Yeah.
mhm. Wow. And are there any particular advocacy focuses or initiatives that you're really passionate about right now? Like what are you getting involved in advocacy?
So several organizations, including Touch for Life, has been amazing for me. One of the things, well, several, I can touch on a couple of them right now. But just trying to address health disparities in breast cancer care. And so thinking about like inclusive access, ensuring that everyone has access to screening and treatment, regardless of their financial situation, race, or location. Educating and advocacy, of course. So raising awareness about breast cancer risk and importance of early detection,
Mhm.
promoting diversity in research. So I love what Dr. AK was saying, and supporting policies, definitely. So advocating for policies that address systematic inequalities in healthcare,
Mhm.
and then just letting everyone know that your story is literally like what should be pushing you. So let your story, share your story, be that representation because it's super important. So with me, it's my age, my race, um, my location. I'm in the DMV area. Um, I'm a mother. So just being able to represent that and be that representation for other people and letting them know, hey, we're here. We
Mhm.
are important. Black Genes Matter, just like the vibes that you get when you go to the doctor's office, when you're creating yourself, your support team. So just focusing on that.
Wow. Fuel your vibe and the things that bring you joy and fill your cup first. And that's what we're doing here on SOS every fourth Saturday here on blackdoctor.org. Jennifer, thank you so much for
Thank
coming.
you.
Yes, and we'll stay with us because we're going to bring you back and we're going to talk to Laura Crandon some more because we have some more SOS Soul Filling Our Sisters here on blackdoctor.org. Stay with us.
Can we get music?
We get a book, even better, with
Awesome.
the opportunity to talk about how to not only fill your cup and fuel your soul, but feed your fight. Laura, tell us about it.
Yeah, so this is a book that is made possible through a grant from the CDC and Johns Hopkins. And the whole vision that came to me about this book was because it was difficult during my journey to figure out what to eat, what not to eat, managing side effects, what worked, what didn't, because some of the medications didn't work for me. You know, like one particularly for nausea would give me a kickback headache. So yeah, it got rid of the nausea, but like I'd have a throbbing headache. So that wasn't good. And it ended up that ginger capsules were really best for me. Like I started chewing ginger, that didn't work. And so like I wanted to figure out what worked. And the reason that you can figure out what works is you got to ask people who've been through the fight and the journey. And that's what the book's about is we've profiled 5 women and their stories and their recipes that they used before, during, and after treatment, and lots of nutrition tips from the fabulous Sharon Hawks, who's a nutritionist, who really gets it. You know, it's really culturally appropriate. It's really our recipes from our community and things like, you know, think greens and gardening, like getting your own herbs. You know, even if you have a small place like I do, you can have a little pot that could have thyme or rosemary or like cherry tomatoes, things like that. Like practical tips for you. And then what's really neat is that we've got YouTube videos of the authors of the recipes, so you can hear right from them why this was important. Everyone from, you know, your mom, your dad, or what it kind of felt like to have. And then I've got a section in the book and I talk about side effects because that's real. That all side effects, as I mentioned, don't have to be treated with medication. You can also manage them naturally with food. And so, really, this book is meant to be an inspiration. It's meant to be something that's practical for our community. It's by our community, for our community. And I hope that you find a lot of joy in reading it. It's the recipes, but it's also the stories and the background on our culture. Oh, Dr. Mo, I can't hear you.
I was going to say, I said, I just love that. And then once again, speaking to the power of advocacy, not only in research, not only in getting the care you demand, but in also making sure that we have the tools to live a healthy, thriving life. So as we bring back our advocate guests with us, as we bring Jennifer back, I want to talk a little bit more about this concept of advocacy, because I think people watching may feel like I need to be a part of a group, or that this is something I need training in, or how do I even, who is an advocate? How do I become one? So I'm going to start with you, Laura. And I want you, if you would, share some of your experience as a metastatic breast cancer thriver, and how it led you to founding Touch for Life, which is the sponsoring organization that brought us all here together today.
Yes, it really was me getting angry. Once I realized that the treatment that I got access to, I was in a clinical trial. You mentioned earlier, Dr. Mo, that only 3% of the people in the clinical trials look like us. I didn't realize that. So I found more and more. I had the genetic testing. I had this thing. I did the biobanking that Dr. AK talked about, and I had, looked at mutations, and I had really specific medication, what's called precision medicine for me. And I found out that there's this big gap between what white patients get and what we get, and that what I got made me a unicorn. And I just didn't think that was fair. And so, raised in the household that I was raised with two pioneering parents, my mom was a hidden figure type at NIH, like equivalent to that, but at NIH. My dad was in the Negro Leagues, and so they always taught me about once you go through the door, you open it for others.
That's right.
And I was just compelled to do that. And it just meant using my voice and my experience to speak up for those who weren't in the room. And I just started doing that. And that's how Touch for Life really was born. And I get to sit at a lot of tables, and I'm really grateful for that. And what I do is I always have an ask and a demand on behalf of the community, the people who are watching this program, and the people who maybe never see this program. But if I'm at the table, I'm going to speak up, and speak up for what should be just and what's right.
Wow. And so talk to us about what are some of those challenges in achieving health equity, and how does Touch for Life address those?
So one of the challenges, there's a paper that just came out about looking at the gap between the testing rates when someone is diagnosed with metastatic disease, getting what is in fact mandated by the clinical guidelines, NCCN. It's an acronym, but basically what you need to know is just these guidelines that guide what doctors do. That gap, like less than 50% of us are getting these kinds of tests. And these tests help guide what treatment you're going to get, what order you're going to get it, whether you get chemo, radiation, or so long, what medications you have access to, whether you're a candidate for a clinical trial. But there's half of us missing. It's like baking a cake. It's coming out the oven, and then you add the eggs. Like we're just an afterthought, and it's no good for anybody. And so those gaps exist, and those are the things that we're in a real big way really trying to address. First, by educating our community on the things to ask for, using our own voice, and then also demanding better policies, whether those are at the the lawmaking level or at employer group level. And then finally, I go around and I talk to about 4,000 or 5,000 doctors a year. In fact, I'll be in Houston in a couple weeks, talking about and challenging doctors who are coming to a blood cancer conference on biomarkers at MD Anderson.
That's exciting. Wow.
Those are the things that we do.
I want to pivot to you and ask as a part of this conversation. I want to bring you in and talk about, misinformation, right? There's so much, I think, in our community, things that aren't true, things that are myths. Where do you source good information, and what is your role as an advocate in providing that type of information? So talk about some of the education that you do for the community.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you now.
So I stay informed about the latest developments, one through staying in touch with organizations like Touch for Life, but also through medical journals, support groups, staying in touch with my healthcare team at Johns Hopkins, I think that patient advocacy plays a critical role in promoting research by highlighting like patient experiences and needs. And so I think that if everyone starts or knows that they can start kind of diving into research priorities, that advocates can kind of help raise awareness, funding, support for research initiatives. And so that's where I do most of my research, also listening to other advocates and those who might not consider themselves advocates yet, but are brave enough or just need that little push to start sharing their stories. Like I've been getting myself, 'cause this is fairly new to me too. And so that's where I get most of my information from. And listening, Googling shows like this has been awesome for me. Yeah.
Wow. And Laura, back to you, in terms of talking to and getting involved, how can people who are watching get involved in some of these initiatives? Because I have a feeling that people watching thought Laura Crandon and her organization was really just about breast cancer and breast health. And here we are doing a whole show on blood cancers. So what's going on? What's the future of Touch for Life look like? And how can people get involved?
Gosh, it really is. Thank you for that. It's really a vision. I mean, Black Genes Matter really applies to a lot of things. We started with lived experience with breast, branched out to prostate because of the potential genetic connection. You can inherit mutated gene that puts you at risk for breast cancer if your dad, let's say, had prostate cancer. And then as we learned, and like Jennifer said, started doing research and started to understand the impact of all understanding the genes and mutations and the importance of that. It's in kidneys. There are heart biomarkers that put you at risk for the widowmaker. Parkinson's, we're going to have Michael J. Fox Foundation is coming to this show in a couple months as well. And so it really is, the vision is really, because Black genes matter to all these things. And in all these cases, we are overrepresented in getting these diseases, yet underrepresented in survivorship. And so how do they get involved? I mean, they go to blackgenesmatter.info and fill out the contact information, raise their hand and say, hey, I want more information. I want to be involved. I want to be an ambassador. I want to be a volunteer. I want to learn more. I want to get the newsletter. Those are ways that you can get involved. We also have a program called Behave, Breast Health Advocate Voices for Equity, where we're training Black women and who have lived experience, but also allies, how to advocate for things that are important to them. And that cohort will have a new opening starting in the fall to continue that program.
Wow. So you heard it here, fall cohort to learn. If you feel like I need more tools and more education to do what Jennifer's doing, and she's telling her story and learning and laughing along the way. But if you feel like you need training for it and you want to be a part of a movement, there is a space for you at the Behave program. So we're going to get ready to close out and summarize everything. And I want you all to stay with us because this is SOS, Soul Filling Our Sisters, every fourth Saturday on blackdoctor.org. And we got a few more drops to put in your cup, so stay right with us. So you heard today, unsurprisingly, that Black patients who have acute myeloid leukemia have worse outcomes than white patients of the same age, despite getting similar intensive treatments. And it's the same story over and over again, but it highlights the need to understand what is in our genes. We need to understand and dive deeper into the healthcare disparities, and we need the work of every advocate to do that. So this is why we're talking about these things today. And as we get ready to close, I wonder if you all could give us some final thoughts on Black Genes Matters, on advocacy, on partnering in research, and anything else you want people to take away as they leave and go about their holiday week.
I'll let Jennifer go first.
Okay, again, being anyone who's interested in being an advocate, I am not a scientist. I am not a doctor. I am experiencing life, and it's shown that it not only has it helped me on a daily, but it's also helping others. All the decisions that I've had to make this past year, or honestly fight and advocate for, has just reinforced my belief in trusting one's instinct. So if my journey makes just one person think about their own health or chase after their well-being, we're onto something big, honestly. And if my story nudges someone to just kind of listen to their body, to advocate for their health, or simply to keep pushing through whatever challenge they're going to, we're all moving in the right direction.
There
Thank
it
you
is.
so much for having me.
Mike,
That is well said. Yeah.
Mm.
What I've learned also from the participants in Behave is how powerful your story is. And even through this journey, I was really encouraged to tell my story more. And I was hesitant, like, oh, I was just thinking it was just life, I'm just dealing with life. And people thought it was kind of remarkable. I've had 3 brain surgeries and all that kind of thing. And I'm
With a
just,
smile.
it's pretty remarkable. No, it is pretty remarkable.
and no, they said, no, Laura, tell your story. It's real. And I started to tell it and started to see people's reaction and saw how it drew people in. And then their story came out, or that I was able to help them along their journey because they were experiencing something that they weren't sure was breast cancer, or a friend,
Mhm.
and helping someone else. And so your story really is powerful. People really need to hear it. Yeah, it takes some courage to tell. Yeah, but you get used to it. And once you see and hear that you're helping somebody, it's easier and
Mhm.
easier to tell. And that's all it takes to be an advocate, is telling your story and, and asking for better.
Can I add that Behave has been awesome because not only is advocacy, learning how to share your story important, but once you start learning, and this is part of what Behave teaches about the policy, and the decision makers and the process to get like certain bills passed and things like that, it is so empowering. Like it allows you to feel like there's actually something you can do and that you can teach others too and impart that wisdom, that newfound knowledge that you're learning onto others. And it feels so good. Like Behave just feels good.
Oh, I
It's
love
just
that.
Oh
awesome.
my gosh, that is so nice to hear.
That's
Yes,
the best
thank you.
commercial ever. That is the best plug for it. So
We've
we're
got
going to put a
chills.
link in the chat, yes, because we want you to behave and get involved in advocacy because it does feel good to be able to say, stand up for your sisters, to be able to empower others to do it and to learn the power of your lived experience. Even if you had a great experience in healthcare, we need more of those stories, right?
Yeah,
We to model the stories
yeah.
of what really healthy relationship looks like with your care team. So it doesn't have to be a story of disparity or doom and gloom or any of those things, even though we
Mhm.
do hear those and we want to hear the stories of overcoming. We want to hear the stories of research. We want to hear the stories of empowerment and the cookbooks, the recipes, right? We want to set some new traditions in our community. And that's what we're doing with Touch for Life. It's what we're doing here on SOS every fourth Saturday on blackdoctor.org. We want to thank our speakers, Dr. A.K. Eisfeld from The Ohio State University, Laura Cran, Touch for Life, Jennifer. We thank you so very much, Miss Jennifer Deal. And this has been SOS. Thank you to our sponsors, Hologic, High Impact Partners. And we're going to see you next fourth Saturday here on blackdoctor.org. Until next time.